I don't need money. I just need a hug, like the one your daughter gave me." The words of the 8-year-old girl echoed through the opulent atrium of the new Skyline Galleria, causing several shoppers to halt their brows and observe the unusual scene. Victoria Hayes, CEO of Hayes Innovations and one of the country's most influential tech moguls, had just exited Kids Wonderland, laden with expensive bags for her daughter, Chloe, who was the same age. The black girl was sitting alone near the interactive fountain, watching families pass by with a gaze that mingled innocent curiosity and poignant melancholy. "I'm sorry, sweetie, but I don't have time for this," Victoria replied crisply, adjusting her designer scarf as she tried to navigate around the child. Her voice carried that cool, detached tone often adopted by those who considered certain interactions beneath their notice. The girl stood up slowly, her worn canvas shoes a stark contrast to Victoria's gleaming Italian loafers. "It's not about time, ma'am. It's about connection. I saw you embracing your daughter in there, and I thought maybe you could give me one too." Victoria stopped abruptly, not out of tenderness, but from a burgeoning irritation. "Where are your parents? Children shouldn't be left alone in a place like this. Someone should call security." "My dad works cleaning on the 3rd floor," the girl replied, her voice devoid of shame. "He said when he was done he'd come down and get me. In the meantime, I'm here watching the happy people." The answer made Victoria frown. A cleaner. "Of course. Look, child, I don't know what kind of trick this is, but I'm not obligated to—" "It's not a trick," the girl interrupted him gently. "It's just that I've never had a hug from a mother, and you seemed really good at it." For a fleeting moment, something flickered across Victoria's face. Perhaps a distant echo of her own childhood, where warmth and affection were scarce commodities. But the feeling vanished in an instant, replaced by renewed annoyance. "Listen here, kid." Victoria knelt to the girl's height, her voice low but sharp. "The world owes you nothing. The sooner you learn that, the better. Now, out of my way." The little girl didn't move. Instead, her eyes, an intense hazel, locked onto Victoria's with a surprising resolve for someone so young. "You're right," she said calmly. "The world owes me nothing, but I don't owe it anything either." Victoria stood up, taken aback by the response. There was something in the girl's voice, a quiet steel that unsettled her more than she cared to admit. "Mom, why are you talking to her?" Chloe appeared at her mother's side, following her gaze toward the black girl. "She's not like us." Victoria smiled approvingly. "Exactly, darling. Some people just don't belong in our circles." She placed a protective hand on Chloe's shoulder. "Let's get out of here before this becomes an issue." As mother and daughter walked away, the little girl remained standing, watching them disappear amidst the glittering luxury stores. Her small hands slowly clenched into fists, but her face remained eerily calm. A man in a cleaning uniform hurried over. "Sophia, I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I took longer than I expected." He was black, and he noticed his daughter's faraway expression. "Did something happen?" Sophia looked at her father, then in the direction where Victoria had vanished. "Yes, something happened, Papa. I learned a very important lesson today." "What lesson, Mihija?" A small but determined smile appeared on Sophia's face. "I learned that some people need to be taught about humanity, and maybe I'm just the right person to teach them." Her father frowned, not fully grasping the depth of her words. But something in his daughter's tone made him realize that this encounter had planted a seed that would grow in unimaginable ways. 3 days after the encounter at the Galleria, Sophia was sitting in the bustling public library, deeply engrossed in a book on corporate mergers, when her gaze fell upon the photo. Victoria Hayes was on the cover of Global Tech Innovator, smiling confidently next to the headline, "The Digital Empress. How Victoria Hayes Forged a $3 billion Empire Dollar." Sophia ran her fingers over the image, committing every detail of the face that had rejected her so coldly to memory. It wasn't anger she felt. It was something deeper, more calculated. It was the birth of a purpose. "That woman is very rich, isn't she, mi amor?" asked her father, Mateo, sitting down next to her after finishing his cleaning shift. His tired eyes showed the marks of someone who worked 16 hours a day to support his daughter alone. Yes, Papa. Very rich. Sophia closed the magazine carefully. But wealth isn't everything, right? Mateo smiled proudly. Even at 8 years old, his daughter showed a maturity that constantly surprised him. What he didn't know was that Sophia had inherited something much more valuable than money, a photographic memory, and an intelligence that her teachers were beginning to notice as exceptional. That same week, while Sophia was engrossed in her studies at the library, Victoria Hayes was giving a live interview on national television about corporate social responsibility. The reporter asked her about initiatives to support disadvantaged communities. Look, it's vital to help those who genuinely demonstrate the drive to help themselves, Victoria replied, adjusting her expensive blazer. But we can't simply hand out resources indiscriminately. Some individuals need to grasp that in life. Everything has a cost, and nothing comes truly free. The presenter nodded respectfully. What about educational support for vulnerable children? Victoria chuckled dismissively. Education only yields results when there's a strong foundational structure at home. There's little point investing in those who lack the environment to truly leverage the opportunity. It's simply money wasted. Across town, Sophia watched the interview on the small television in the library. Every word Victoria uttered engraved itself into her mind as if it were a personal affront. But instead of tearing up or lashing out, Sophia did something unexpected. She smiled. "Why are you smiling, dear?" asked Mrs. Davies, the kind librarian who had become a kind of adoptive grandmother to the girl. "Because she just gave me all the answers I needed," Sophia replied enigmatically, turning her attention back to the formidable stack of economics books piled on her table. The following week, Sophia's school organized a city-wide science fair. Her project drew everyone's attention, a meticulously detailed analysis of economic disparity and access to technological education. For an 8-year-old girl, the work demonstrated an impressive grasp of complex concepts. "Where did you get all this information?" asked her teacher, Mr. Henderson, leafing through the perfectly organized pages. "Research, Mr. Henderson. I read a lot about innovators who started poor and became successful, and also about those born into wealth who stayed rich without contributing much to society." The teacher noticed a separate folder with news clippings, all about Hayes Innovations. "Why are you so interested in this particular company?" Sophia looked him straight in the eye with the same disconcerting serenity she had displayed at the Galleria. "Because one day I'm going to work there. Or rather, I'm going to own it." The teacher chuckled, thinking it was just a childish dream. But something in Sophia's voice, the way she had organized every piece of information, every chart, every financial figure about the company, made him realize that this was no child's fantasy. It was a plan. Meanwhile, Victoria Hayes continued her privileged life, completely unaware that she had planted a seed of formidable determination in a mind that would prove to be brighter and more dangerous than she could ever imagine. After receiving first place at the science fair, Sophia kept the trophy on a small shelf in the room she shared with her father. Next to the trophy, she taped a photo cut out of Global Tech Innovator. It wasn't Victoria in the photo. It was the glistening Hayes Innovations Tower. "One day, Papa," she murmured to herself, "she'll find out that underestimating people can be the biggest mistake of her life." Mateo, who had overheard the comment from the small kitchen, felt a chill. He couldn't explain why, but he had a premonition that his little girl was planning something far grander than a child should be capable of planning. What neither of them knew was that that same night, Victoria Hayes would approve an internal policy that would make it even harder for cleaning service contractors like Mateo to secure stable contracts with Hayes Innovations. The circle of subtle cruelty was just beginning to form. Each new slight Victoria inflicted on people like Mateo and Sophia only fueled a silent determination that grew like a storm on the horizon, invisible to those who couldn't recognize the signs, but potentially devastating to those who underestimated its destructive force. 8 years had passed since that encounter at the Skyline Galleria, and Sophia Garcia, now 16, had become something Victoria Hayes could never have predicted. An academic prodigy with an unyielding thirst for justice. During all that time, Victoria remained exactly the same arrogant and prejudiced woman. In fact, she had gotten worse. Her corporate policies had become even more exclusionary, and she had developed a habit of giving lectures on digital meritocracy at elite universities, always emphasizing that some individuals were simply not wired for certain positions. Sophia followed Victoria's every move through tech journals, interviews, and social media. It wasn't obsession, it was meticulous research. Methodically, she cataloged every prejudice statement, every discriminatory hiring policy of Hayes Innovations. Every time Victoria publicly demonstrated her contempt for people like her and her father, Sophia added another entry to her growing digital dossier. "Mejia, are you sure you want to study business management and tech entrepreneurship?" Mateo asked one evening, watching Sophia study, surrounded by books on algorithms, corporate law, and venture capital. "You're so brilliant at theoretical physics and AI." "I'm sure, Papa," Sophia replied without looking up from the Hayes Innovations financial projections she had printed out at the library. Some battles can only be won when you understand exactly how the system works, and how to build a better one. What Mateo didn't know was that Sophia had achieved something extraordinary, a full scholarship to study at the same elite university where Victoria Hayes often gave her self-congratulatory lectures. Even more impressive, she had been accepted at 16, 2 years younger than most freshmen. It was during her second week at the university that Sophia met Professor Eris Thorne, a 60-year-old black man who taught ethical AI development and had been one of the few professors to publicly question Victoria Hayes's often dubious business practices. "Are you the prodigy who submitted that astonishing analysis of tech sector discrimination trends?" Professor Thorne asked after class, looking at Sophia with genuine curiosity. "Yes, sir," Sophia replied, maintaining the respectful posture she always displayed with adults he admired. "In my 4 decades in academia, I have rarely seen such an accurate and well-reasoned analysis, especially from someone so young." Professor Thorne sat down on the edge of the desk. "May I ask what motivated you to choose Hayes Innovations specifically as a subject for such in-depth study?" Sophia hesitated for a moment, then decided to be honest. "Let's just say I have personal reasons for wanting to understand how individuals like Victoria Hayes operate, and perhaps how they can be superseded." Professor Thorne nodded understandingly. "Personal reasons often produce the most compelling research. How about we collaborate on a special, highly confidential project?" That was how Sophia gained access to academic resources she could never have imagined. Professor Thorne not only became her mentor but also her first strategic ally. Together, they began systematically documenting discriminatory practices, unethical data harvesting, and monopolistic tactics not only at Hayes Innovations but throughout Victoria's entire business ecosystem. Meanwhile, Victoria continued her life of unchecked privilege. Completely unaware that the girl she had looked down on years ago was now studying her every move with the precision of a master hacker preparing for a complex system infiltration. During this period, Sophia discovered something truly shocking hidden within the company's labyrinthine public records. Hayes Innovations had received tens of millions in government grants and privacy compliance waivers over the years, supposedly for developing secure, inclusive AI platforms for underserved communities. But the money had been systematically diverted to other highly questionable ventures, and the AI projects themselves were ghostware, never implemented, but technically legal through loopholes Victoria exploited skillfully. "This is not just gold, Sophia," Professor Thorne murmured, reviewing Sophia's findings with a grim expression. "This is a digital powder keg. But you need to understand that people like Hayes have an army of highly paid lawyers, PR spin doctors, and deep political influence. Any move against her must be calculated with absolute surgical precision." "I know," Sophia replied, meticulously organizing her encrypted evidence folders. "That's why I'm not going to attack her head-on. I'm going to use the very system she's been manipulating for decades to build something far superior. That was when Sophia revealed her most audacious plan to Professor Thorne. She didn't just want to expose Victoria Hayes, she wanted to replace her. At 16, Sophia had already developed a revolutionary ethical AI business model, a decentralized, privacy-focused data platform that could not only compete with Hayes' innovations, but also demonstrate that truly ethical tech companies were more profitable and sustainable in the long run. "Are you serious?" Professor Thorne asked, impressed by the sheer sophistication and moral integrity of the plan presented by his young protege. "Completely serious," Sophia affirmed, her hazel eyes gleaming with conviction. "Victoria Hayes planted a seed of determination in me 8 years ago. Now it's time to show her what kind of tree that seed has grown into. A tree that provides shelter and opportunity, not just shadows of power." Professor Thorne smiled. There was something in Sophia's voice, a mixture of serenity and contained power that reminded him of the truly transformative leaders he had known throughout his life. "Then let's get to work. But I want you to understand one thing. The path you are choosing will not be easy. People like Hayes don't take kindly to being challenged by people like me." Sophia finished the sentence, her smile carrying a quiet confidence that didn't match her 16 years. "Exactly, Professor. Victoria Hayes made the mistake of teaching me that the world owes me nothing. She just forgot to consider one possibility. What if I decide that I don't owe her world anything either?" That night, as Sophia walked across the university campus, she passed the grand Digital Innovation Hall, where Victoria Hayes would be giving a keynote lecture the following week on navigating the new tech frontier. Leadership and ethical AI. A small but promising smile appeared on her face. The girl who had once asked for just a hug was about to become the most intricate, inescapable nightmare of the woman who had denied her even that small display of humanity. And the most ironic thing was that Victoria Hayes, in her infinite arrogance, had no idea that she had created her own silent digital tormentor that day at the Skyline Galleria 8 years ago. What Victoria would soon discover was that underestimating the intelligence and iron determination of a rejected child had been the biggest strategic and ethical mistake of her life. Because Sophia Garcia wasn't just preparing to confront her. She was preparing to surpass her in every aspect that Victoria valued most: innovation, influence, and above all, the genuine respect that comes with true ethical leadership. Victoria Hayes' keynote lecture on navigating the new tech frontier, leadership and ethical AI was predictably packed. The university's main auditorium, equipped with cutting-edge holographic displays, held 500 people, including influential tech investors, academics, and aspiring entrepreneurs. Victoria, now 44, had reached the zenith of her public arrogance, boasting a net worth of $3.2 billion and a reputation she considered unassailable. True leadership in the digital age, Victoria declared from the polished podium, adjusting her smart glasses with a theatrical flourish, is not a matter of sentiment or social impact rhetoric. It is a matter of superior intellect, decisive action, and above all, knowing your place in the global innovation hierarchy. The audience applauded politely. In the third row, Sophia Garcia, now 16 and looking far more mature, watched Victoria's every word with the chilling patience of a programmer debugging a complex, corrupted system. Professor Thorne sat next to her, both with discreet, unassuming tablets on their laps. "Some individuals are born to innovate and lead," Victoria continued, pacing the stage with the confident stride of someone who had never once questioned her own inherent privilege. "Others are born to consume and follow. The sooner we accept this fundamental reality, the more efficiently our digital society will evolve." That's when Sophia calmly stood up and raised her hand, requesting to ask a question. Victoria, not recognizing her after 8 years, gave a dismissive nod. "Miss Hayes," Sophia began, her clear, calm voice amplified by the auditorium's acoustics. "You just mentioned that some individuals are born to lead. I'd like to know your opinion on tech executives who leverage millions in public grants, specifically for ethical AI initiatives, only to divert those funds to private, speculative ventures." The auditorium fell into a stunned silence. Victoria felt the first icy trickle of dread down her spine, but she maintained her composure, a practiced smile on her face. Young lady, government investment in private sector innovation is an established economic practice. Perhaps you should familiarize yourself more with advanced corporate finance before— Oh, I have. Sophia interrupted her gently, opening her tablet with a precise gesture. In fact, I have specifically studied Hayes Innovations. For example, between 2017 and 2025, your company received $63 million in federal grants and compliance waivers for developing privacy-centric AI platforms for underserved communities. Yet, those platforms were never deployed. The funds were redirected, as internal memos confirm, to a series of offshore shell corporations you control. Your exact words were, "Optimize capital flow discreetly." Professor Thorne stood up and, with a silent signal, members of a prearranged legal team began distributing meticulously compiled digital packets and QR codes down the aisles. The audience murmured, their faces illuminated by the glow of tablets and phones as they scanned codes revealing encrypted internal correspondence from Hayes Innovations, redacted government grant agreements, and forensic financial audits that exposed a web of violated public trust and outright fraud. Victoria tried to regain control, her voice losing its composure. "Listen here, girl. You have no idea who you're dealing with. My legal team is—" "Your legal team has already been notified, Miss Hayes," Sophia replied, her voice maintaining a disconcerting, almost surgical calm. "As have the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Cybercrime Division, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and 3 congressional oversight committees. My personal testimony, alongside Professor Thorne's expert analysis, has been formally submitted." That was when Victoria truly looked at Sophia for the first time. Something in those hazel eyes and that poised, unyielding posture awakened a long-buried, distant memory. A black girl in a mall, asking for a hug. "Impossible," Victoria muttered, the color draining from her face. Sophia smiled, the same calm, knowing smile she had shown 8 years earlier. "Do you remember me, Miss Hayes? I was that little girl who just wanted a hug. You told me the world owed me nothing." The auditorium was completely silent now, save for the furious tapping of journalists' keyboards. Victoria felt her legs go weak. "You were right," Sophia continued, walking slowly toward the stage, her presence growing with every step. "The world really didn't owe me anything. So I decided I didn't owe your world, your digital hierarchy, anything either." Sophia stopped precisely at the center of the stage, where Victoria had stood moments before, and turned to face the stunned audience. "For the past 8 years, I have systematically documented every unethical practice, every deceptive maneuver, every manipulative policy of Hayes Innovations, fraudulent contracts, data privacy violations, systematic algorithmic bias in hiring, market manipulation, and the outright theft of public funds." Victoria tried to retreat to the back of the stage, but 2 individuals in dark suits, clearly federal agents, quietly blocked her path. "The most damning part," Sophia said, pulling a second tablet from her understated briefcase, "is the encrypted messages Miss Hayes sent to her top executives just last night, attempting to initiate a massive data purge after learning an investigation was underway." The massive holographic screens in the auditorium lit up, displaying irrefutable printouts of secure messaging conversations, in which Victoria explicitly ordered the deletion of sensitive files and threatened employees who might talk too much. "Obstruction of justice," Professor Thorne announced solemnly to the stunned audience, his voice echoing with moral authority, "in addition to a plethora of other federal charges." Victoria Hayes, the woman who had built a tech empire based on cold calculation and unyielding privilege, was now at the center of her own very public, very digital destruction. Cameras from journalists, discreetly invited and poised for this exact moment, captured every flicker of humiliation on her face. "For 8 years," Sophia said, her voice clear and resonant, carrying the unwavering conviction of truth, "you built your wealth by systematically trampling on people like my father and me, exploiting every loophole, dismissing every human cost. Today, those same people you despised are responsible for dismantling the very foundation of your digital empire. Agents approached Victoria with silent, gleaming handcuffs. Before she was led away, she looked at Sophia one last time, her eyes finally understanding the sheer magnitude of her own arrogance. "The little girl who asked for a hug," Victoria whispered, utterly defeated. "She grew up," Sophia replied simply, her gaze steady and unwavering. As Victoria Hayes was escorted out of the auditorium amidst camera flashes and the shouts of reporters, one question hung in the air. Could a single, callous denial of humanity, 8 years ago, have planted the seed for the biggest corporate downfall of the decade? And more importantly, what did Sophia Garcia plan to do with the empire she had helped bring down? 2 years after Victoria Hayes' spectacular fall, Sophia Garcia walked the vibrant streets of the same diverse neighborhood where she grew up, but now as the visionary CEO of the Veritas Foundation, an organization that had rapidly become the largest provider of ethical tech education and digital literacy programs for underserved youth across the nation. Hayes Innovations, completely restructured and rebranded after Victoria's conviction for corporate fraud, obstruction of justice, and illicit data practices, had undergone a seismic shift. Ironically, Sophia, through a strategic ethical investment group, had acquired the company for a mere fraction of its market value during a court-ordered auction, transforming it into a global model of corporate social responsibility that other tech giants now desperately scrambled to emulate. "Miss Garcia," said Elena Rodriguez, her dynamic chief operating officer, "we've received over 50 new applications for this week's AI literacy program alone. That's more than 7,000 young people benefiting in just 2 years across our various initiatives." Sophia smiled as she reviewed the candidates' profiles on her tablet. Each story was a mirror of her own journey. Bright young minds who just needed opportunity and a fair chance to unleash their immense potential. "Approve every qualified applicant, Elena. And remember," she added, her voice firm yet gentle, "no child will ever be judged by the color of their skin, their socioeconomic background, or the brand of clothes they wear. Our tech is for everyone." Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Victoria Hayes was living a drastically different reality. After serving 18 months in a federal minimum security prison, she had lost not only her vast fortune, but also shared custody of her daughter, Chloe. Her ex-husband, horrified by the public revelations about Victoria's character and the depth of her deception, had relocated to another continent with their child. Victoria now worked as a shift manager in a small, struggling electronics repair shop, earning minimum wage. Her former associates in the tech world avoided her completely, and her reputation was so utterly destroyed that she couldn't even secure a basic bank loan to attempt a meager comeback. "You don't understand," Victoria begged her weary lawyer over a crackling phone line. "I need a chance to start over, just one chance to rebuild." "Victoria," her lawyer replied, his voice devoid of sympathy, "you systematically destroyed the lives and trust of hundreds, perhaps thousands of people over decades. You are now experiencing merely a fraction of the consequences you so willingly inflicted." The following week, Sophia was invited to deliver the keynote address at the commencement ceremony of the very university where she had publicly confronted Victoria 2 years earlier. The grand Digital Innovation Hall was packed to capacity with excited graduates, proud families, and influential figures from across the tech landscape. "Today, I want to share a story about an 8-year-old girl," Sophia began, her voice echoing with clarity and quiet power across the very stage where Victoria had been utterly humiliated. "This girl learned that the world owed her nothing, but she also decided that she owed nothing to the cruel world that tried so hard to limit her." The audience was completely silent, captivated by the story that many already knew from the news, but which took on a profoundly new dimension when told from the perspective of the protagonist herself. "What that arrogant woman didn't realize," Sophia continued, her gaze sweeping across the faces in the audience, "was that she was inadvertently planting a seed of unyielding determination in a mind that would prove far more powerful than all her money and privilege combined. A mind dedicated not to accumulation, but to transformation. Professor Thorne, now the university's revered dean of ethical computing, watched proudly from his seat in the front row. His former student had become not only a remarkably successful entrepreneur, but a living symbol of hope for millions of young people facing systemic discrimination and lack of opportunity. True progress, Sophia said, her voice carrying the profound wisdom gained through years of struggle and growth, is not about destroying those who hurt you. It's about building something so profoundly great, so demonstrably ethical, that it renders irrelevant the very cruelty they tried to impose on you. It's about building a future where such cruelty can no longer thrive. In the audience, Sophia Garcia wept with immense pride. His younger son, Miguel, who was black, had become a successful software engineer through one of Sophia's Veritas Foundation scholarships, and now worked developing open-source educational platforms for disadvantaged communities, directly countering the kind of exclusionary tech Victoria had once championed. After the speech, a prominent tech journalist approached Sophia. "Miss Garcia, Victoria Hayes recently gave an interview, expressing remorse and asking for a second chance. Do you have any comment?" Sophia reflected for a moment, her gaze thoughtful. Everyone in theory deserves a second chance. The profound difference lies in whether some people use that chance to genuinely learn, grow, and contribute positively, while others merely lament the natural consequences of their own deeply harmful choices. That night, Sophia visited the community center, where she now sponsored an advanced robotics and coding program for inner-city youth. Seeing an 8-year-old black girl focused intensely on programming a small drone, Sophia remembered the girl she had been: vulnerable, hopeful, just wanting to be treated with dignity and seen for her potential. "Miss Sophia," the child asked, looking up, "is it true that you started out with very little, just like us?" Sophia knelt down to be at the child's eye level, just as she had wished Victoria had done years ago. "It's true, mi pequeña innovadora. And you know what I learned? It doesn't matter where you start, but the limitless potential, the boundless brilliance, and the profound humanity you carry inside you." The girl smiled, a shy, spontaneous smile, and spontaneously gave Sophia a heartfelt hug. At that moment, the cycle was beautifully complete. The embrace that had been so coldly denied to one vulnerable child was now freely, warmly given to another, planting seeds of hope, innovation, and compassion, instead of bitterness and resentment. Victoria Hayes had tried to teach Sophia that some people simply knew their predetermined place in society. Instead, Sophia taught her, and the world, that every single person possesses the inherent power to define and create their own far grander place in the world, especially when that place is built on the bedrock of genuine compassion, unwavering justice, and truly shared opportunities. The little girl who once asked only for a hug had grown up to embrace the entire world through her groundbreaking foundation, proving that true strength does not come from stepping on others, but from powerfully lifting everyone up to your own level of greatness. The ultimate, most profound revenge wasn't destroying Victoria Hayes. It was building a legacy so powerful, so inclusive, and so ethically unassailable that it rendered all the cruelty, all the prejudice, and all the selfish power Victoria stood for utterly irrelevant. And maybe, just maybe, in the end, that was the greatest, most enduring lesson of all. Some battles are won not by viciously destroying the enemy, but by completely transcending the very need for enemies, and instead, building a better world for everyone. If this story about how a simple request for affection transformed into a revolution of hope, innovation, and justice touched your heart, then consider supporting stories like this one. Because sometimes, when the world tries to teach us that we don't deserve love or opportunity, the most powerful, transformative response is to build a world where all children receive the embrace and the chance they truly deserve. And you, in your own way, can absolutely be a part of that ongoing transformation.